Hello, everyone. Uh, well, by the time you watch this video, I uh, will have been on top of the mountain near Tak province. And of course, I decide to record this video because I cannot be in class today. Well, thank you so much for being in class. And of course, this video will take uh, just about our class time. I will just run this video for about 1 hour or 15 minutes and then I will stop. If you have any questions, you can leave the questions on the MS team, or you can just note the questions and ask me when I am in class later. So let me share the PowerPoint slides, the things that I would like to share with you today, and then I'll be using MS Team later. So first of all, the slides, let me share the slide with you now. Here, this is the slides I would like to use in class today. Last time we discussed something about this. You still remember this memory about memory? Now, last time when we played the memory game of the Aymara language, I asked you to think about how long, you are going to keep Aymara words in your mind. For example, when we say equina, do you know what it means? Laka, what it means? Wena, Pandara, Aka, Kelkana, Kayu, Macha, Usuta, and Pizza. Well, if you remember over 5 words out of the list of these 10 of the Aymara words, then you have such a long-term memory. But if you cannot remember anything, do not be surprised and do not blame yourself for not being unable to remember anything, because of course, we did this test like a couple days ago, and of course from a couple days ago until now, some of your memory about Aymara words might be fading away already, but I'm sure that you will still remember Pandara when someone mentioned, I think Pumet mentioned this in the class last time, that Pandara can be associated with Pandora, the evil box, and of course associated with the lady, and the lady to the flowers. And Pandora in Aymara word means, in English, like flowers. Some of the things like matcha, for example, you may be remembering this word because it may be connected to the name of a singer, for example, and matcha in Aymara means song in English. So if you have the connections or at the association, which is one of the strategies you use to prevent, the your memory not to forget anything in a long terms like this. From the memory chart last time we talked about, you see that we need this kind of memory, but that doesn't mean that your memory will not be gone even after we use some strategies to prevent our loss of memory. Okay, or we may try to remember something so hard, sometimes we lose our memory later on, because when time passes by, you know that our memory will be sort of like fading away. So that's the whole thing about it. So just think about what you did from last class and compare. So today class, I would like to share with you a little bit part of a research study which this class focuses on. And section number 3, I would like to share with you, apart from the research questions and the hypothesis, is what we call the review of the related works in psycholinguistics, which is, in general terms, you call that thing literature review. I would just talk about the type of literature review usually found in psycholinguistics area, and then I would like to share with you some of the things we found in the literature of psycholinguistics, and after that you can think about what you have studied already from 418, the research preparation class, and you may think about any any what any works you have been studying or reading so far, you know, concerning any areas that you are interested in. By the way, I probably need to wear uh, my sweater because outside the temperature is about maybe 15 to 17 right now. This is on top of the mountain where the road was almost impossible, you know, uh, to get us here anyway, and it was raining the whole day. Just hang on for just a second. Okay. I like you to open the book to page 40 before I talk about literature reviewed, because most of the information, I mean all of the information uh, is on page 40 of the textbooks, and I will use the information from the textbook on that page. Okay, so let's take a look at what I got over here for all of you. Number one, if you talk about literature reviewed, first of all, you know that we talk about the reviews of the related works. Why do we need to review the related works when we do the research? Is because we need some information of the work done previously before you decide to work on a particular topic of the research. You need to find out what works have been done before that, and all of this work must be related to what you are working on. So that's what we talk about. And of course, when we review works, sometimes the sources of the works you reviewed uh, are the primary sources, and which mean that you read them directly from the textbook, from the book, from a journal, from a paper, from a research report somewhere. But sometimes you can come across lots of secondary sources. The sources you do not directly read from the original source, but you cite that from someone else's source. I'm not going into details how you do the internal citation of these things, because I think uh, 418 will help you review how to write the primary and the secondary sources already. But what I would like to focus in psycholinguistic normally, and this is probably the most uh, cases of literature reviewed, that everyone will work on what we call summary or the synthesis of the whole study. What do I mean by this? When we talk about a literature review that summarize or synthesize the whole study, sometimes you will see that they will put down the information about the participants or the subjects of the research work. And then sometimes the methods, you know, plus the tools, the instruments used in the research. And after that, sometimes they summarize and synthesize the whole findings of the research works. This is the most case we have seen in psycholinguistics. So I will show you more examples later. All right. Uh, say hello to Ajahn Wen. Ajahn Wen is sitting right behind me over here, reading his book, preparing for his class also. All right. Now the second type of the review of the related work is what we call identification or presentation of areas of controversy. The controversial areas, you will find these sometime in the work you reviewed. Sometimes you review 2 or 3 works and they do not come up with the same kinds of results. Then you can identify the controversial areas in these works, okay, these research works. When you identify or present the areas of the controversial issues on the research work, sometimes you know that it's harder than, it's more difficult than summarizing or synthesizing the whole study, of course. But somehow for undergrad students, we normally do not suggest them to do this. We normally suggest people, you know, above the level of undergraduate level, like the graduate students, they sometimes do this. They identify or present the area of controversy. The next things you maybe coming across in review of the works is what we call formulation of questions that need further investigation or need answers. I'm going to show you with more example later with this one. Sometime in the review of the literature, you see some questions have been formulated, and then these questions serve as the point from which the investigation or the research will be starting to answer right after that. So sometimes they ask you the question, but those questions, serve as the investigation point, the further investigation points for the research things. The next type you might see is sometimes you will see researcher describe problems that are related to what they are reviewing. What do we mean by this? Sometimes the problems of some research works, are identified and described. And after you show them, the more precise descriptions of something that your research or some other people research would like to do. So it's pretty similar to the areas of controversy anyway, but somehow you will see the problem, the problem or the problems are being described in this kind of reviewed. The next type of the reviewed is what we call criticism. This is hard. Many people say that when you review works of other people, you cannot put your own idea or criticism toward the thing you are reviewing. But that is not true, especially in psycholinguistics. Maybe 20 to 25% you see researcher put a few words of their own ideas, what they think about what they are reviewing. We call this thing criticism. Well, this is probably too advanced for many of you, for all of you. And I won't recommend this in this class over here. Even in 418, they don't recommend you to do this kind of review at all. Now, I will show you some of the example I have from the research works. This is the first type we call the summarizing or synthesizing of the whole study. Sometimes you just summarize participants and then you jump to the findings. But most of the time you will see the participants or the subjects are being summarized or synthesized with the methods and instruments used in the research work. And after that, the findings of this. For example, this one come from Moody 1988. If you take a look at this one, you will see the review of the study start with Moody 1988. Let me just mark that. Okay, here over here. That's the citation of the primary source, right? Now, Moody 1988 administered the MBTI to. Now, of course, they had a description of MBTI somewhere. Don't pay much attention to that thing, but just pay attention to how the information, the piece of information is synthesized over here to 491 college language students at the first and the second year levels. 59% of the students were intuitors. Now, we already talked about the learning styles. So intuitors is one of the learning styles. Substantially more than 40% found for a sample of 18,592 general college students by Mayer and Macaulay back in 1985. If you look at this, you will see that they start reviewing about participants. And then without I won't say without, because MBTI is actually a test and it is a method or the tool they use. And lastly, they have the finding when they said 59% of the students were intuitors. Maybe this is correct and maybe this is true for all of you too, because most language students are intuitors. That's what they said. I don't say that, but that's what the research says anyway. Okay, let me clear this. Now, the next thing is still what I call summary and synthesis of the whole study again, but this is from the study of, this is from brain study. if you look at this one over here, this is what we read before in class. Now you can see that over here, it marks something like this paper tests the ability of the subject prosodic deficits. We talked about prosodic deficits already, the prosody. We talked about them with right and left brain damage. So you will see the relationship between left hemisphere and right hemisphere in relations to prosodic deficits, and who will be, or will suffer from this more, right? With the left brain damage subject or the right brain damage subjects. They call this the subject anyway. I prefer the word participants, as I told you. Now, the subject repeat and comprehend affective prosody under reduced verbal articulatory. This is the tool, everyone. They also review the tools here. One of the instruments they used. The condition is the prosodic deficits, but they use the tool to test prosodic deficit through affective prosody under reduced verbal articulatory conditions. So they probably slow down the speed, and then these left hemisphere and right hemisphere subject repeat after that. And then they review the results of that later on. So the result demonstrate that reducing verbal articulatory condition greatly improve the performance of the left but not right brain damage patient. So they find out after this research that right brain damage or right brain is linked with prosody or prosodic learning, something like that. Okay, as you can see. So the whole review is about participant, instrument, and findings again for this one. The next one is still the third example of summary and synthesis of the whole study. If you look at this one over here from Messick 1984, page 5, this is, I don't know if 418 tells you to do the primary citation like this, but in psycholinguistics, I prefer something like the year and then the page number. Now, Messick described cognitive style as consistent individual differences in preferred ways of organizing and processing information and experience. If you look at this thing over here, you know that this is a direct quotation they have from Messick's 1984. And then they put Messick over here, and then they put the next researcher, Sternberg and, Grigorenko, describe them as representing, and then they use the direct quotation again, a bridge between blah, 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 until the next researchers, Riding and Chima, 1991. Now they start with 1984, down to 1997, back to 1991. But all the information over here, if you look at them, they are all the background information. Sometimes the summary and synthesis of the whole review is not about the participants, but it's about the basic concepts of the terms they are trying to explain to you in the research, right? And these pieces of information over here will help you understand the tools used later and also the findings they try to identify later in the research. And that's why they can review the research this way. Most of 489 students, I think they come up with this kind of summary or synthesis of the whole study, okay? But if you put too many direct quotations, then sometimes your thesis advisor will get back to you and say, hey, please reduce that and do more paraphrasing. You know this, and you learn this from 489. So that's one of the things I want you to see. Now, the next things, I think, let's take a look at this one. We have seen enough type of summary and synthesis of the whole review. Now let's take a look at another type of these, which I really don't want to recommend you to do, but if you can do that, that would be great. We call identifying or presenting areas of controversy. I like to show you with this example over here from Komos and Sava 2008 on page 262. If you take a look at this one over here, you can see that the area of controversy will be identified by a marker in the English language called while. You know that while over here will give you the idea that what is previously presented over here and what is presented afterwards are different points. In short, I would say controversial issues. So let's take a look at this. When someone said the most widely accepted conceptualization of short-term memory, we talked about it last time. Today is the working memory model developed by Bradley and Hitch 1974. This is what we read in class, the diagram. Okay, the diagram presented on page, let's see, I forgot, sorry. Right, yes, 35. This is very old, right? On page 35, if you look at this diagram, or if you still remember, we used this in class. This is back on page 35, okay? But this one is the old model as reviewed by this work over here. And the previous theory of memory system focused on the storage function of the memory. The new model, they called it. Now you can see that why over here try to contrast the old conceptualization of what we believe about the short-term memory, the STM, and the new model. And the new model suggests and adapts a more dynamic approach, they call that thing. So the information from this part over here and this part over here are something we call controversial areas, as you can see it. So someone who is able to do such a thing like this will be an advanced researcher. Okay, the researchers such as this one over here will have to read a lot of works and compare and then try to identify area of controversy, just like that. Again, I don't want to recommend you to try to do this, but if you can do it, that would be great, as I said. All right, that's one of the things I would like to show you. So please take a look at that. And this is also, since the last type of review is hard to find, so I have only one example to show you. The next example, I think I will have two examples to show to you called describing the problems that are related to what you are reviewing. This looks like areas of controversy, but sometimes you identify it as the last type, but actually they are not. If you look at that, now let me show you this. I will use again Komos and Sava, the last work I have back in 2008 on page 262. And if you read, they review important problems. They just put that thing very clear. Important problem with Carroll's 1981 conceptualization of aptitude for language learning include that it is unclear. So they pinpoint that thing. They just point out that this is the problem. It is unclear how part of the test he developed relate to components of language aptitude. Now, if you put the drawback of one research previously studied, that doesn't mean that you attack them. Of course, it sounds like you attack them, but you try to point out because you want to bring up something new, something different from what they have. So that's why it looked just like the area of controversy, the controversial issues over here, because you try to contrast the idea, right? Just look at that thing over here. So important problems like this. And if you look over here, the unclear thing they mention over here, and how foreign language aptitude and intelligence interact, and what relevance foreign language aptitude has in different types of acquisition contexts. And they refer back to Sawyer and Ranta back in 2001 and Robinson 2005, right? You can see that they do not try to give you the new idea right afterward. They just pinpoint to the problem, they point out the problem, so, and that's it. And maybe the next chapter or the next paragraph, they try to bring up something new. And that will be called area of controversy. If they show you something new, contrast to what, you know, they point out as problems over here. But just at this paragraph is what they call the main problems are being described, okay, for this part of the review. And this one is also hard. Even for me, it's hard. That is one thing I want to show you. The second example of description of the problem is from Bernard 2002, when he reviews Williamson back in 1984. Now, this is about brain and language study. We go back to the brain now. We talk about learning style and then we go back to the brain and sometimes age, okay? All the areas that we talked about in class. If you take a look at this one, Bernard said over here that Williamson 1984, some frontal activity can be expected to be transient or episodic. This is about the frontal part of your brain and dependent on condition tending to induce change. Once a pattern of activity is established and there is no reason for change, this frontal activity might decline. If you read from this line until line number 5 here, you will feel like, oh, there isn't any problem, you know, presented over here. But no, read on. If you read on, the problem identified is being described here, right over here, from here. Many of the studies reviewed below offer evidence of differences in function of frontal and posterior areas. So the area over here, again, points out the problems of the previous research, right, over here. And then they put in quotation marks, I'm sorry, not for, in the citation, internal citation, especially the research work mentioned by Davidson and Huckdahl 1996 support this view. So this is a new view that they would like to present, which is contrast to this one. If someone come up with such a review and tell me this is controversial area, I would say yes to that. But also it also points out the problems of the previous research. So it can be both over here. Okay, that's fine. Again, if you have any questions, if you cannot catch up what I'm saying over here, please note that down. Put your post on the Microsoft team and I will see that I can reply to that later, or save your questions later when you see me in class. The next thing I like to show you, that's the next, the next thing. The next type of the reviews, as I said, is formulating questions that need to be further investigated. Okay, and of course, you don't just investigate those questions you ask or you formulated, but you also need to answer that in your findings of the research later on. So formulation of the question look just like this. This is from Matsuoka and Smith 2008, page 35. And I'm sorry, I just, in order to make it short, I adapted the text a little bit. Okay, the original text was very long, so I just shortened it. Look at that, we have observed that learners who start early in life to expose themselves to their second language are more likely to attain a native or native-like accent than older starters. This is all about age and language learning. We talked about as our second or third topic in psycholinguistics, age and second language. As you know that this is the common sense that people know. If you start earlier in life, you tend to be closer to a native speaker proficiency than those who start later in their life. If I started learning English at, say, 17 years old, I, of course, am much slower than people who started at 5. This is the common sense. This is something that we know that. And then this is from Oyama, and they review all the work. Oyama 1976, Tata, Wood, Lowenthal 1981, and also okay, all of this 1981. So the common idea are from these people. So they try to summarize that. And then Matsuoka and Smith go on like this, everyone. They start with the question rather than a piece of information to tell you what's happening over here, or review something, or start with the problem, or start with the controversial issue. No, they start with the questions. And these questions will serve as a starting point for their investigation, as I said before. So this is something like, have similar results been provided from studies in morphosyntax/grammar? They, of course, in this study, we know that they are going to take a look into grammar study or morphosyntactic structures of something, of the language. Okay? And they start with these questions like this. We call the questions is being formulated. And of course, they will try to find the review related to these questions, or probably partly related to the question being formulated. And after that, they will answer with their own finding later on. So they start with Patkowaski, 1980. If you look at this one here, investigated now 67 immigrants to the United States, finding that learners who had entered the United States before the age of 15 were rated as more proficient in grammar than learners who had entered after the age of 15. So two groups of people, one who entered America before the age of 15, and those, entering America after the age of 15. And what they found, and which answer that question right away over here, is that younger starter are better in grammar than late starters, put it that way. Okay, so this part look just like a synthesis or a summary of something, but it's actually the answer to the question being formulated. The questions that say have similar results being provided from study in morphosyntactic grammar. And over here, the finding over here verify the common sense or the traditional belief or the shared belief of the common belief of the people, the universal belief of the people, let's say. Okay? And you can see one question being formulated. You can do the same things in your research. You can ask the question, but you have to find the answer. The answer can be this question can be immediately answered or can be waited until later summary of your finding in the research work. Next is, sorry, what's happening? Okay, this one. This is criticism, something that you rarely find in the research reviewed, the literature review of the research work. But somehow I can find one thing over here to show you. If you take a look at this one, you can see that Sewell 2003, the reviewer of this excerpt over here, gives you an account coming from her own idea, her criticism, put it that way. Now read together again. A second learning style is the continuum of reflective to impulsive. Now we talk about reflectivity and impulsivity kind of learner. Remember that is. Reflective learners think before they say something, but sometimes they are slow learners. Impulsive learners, on the other hand, they are quick. They test out their own rules, and they are not afraid of making mistakes. So they are quick learners. Sometimes they speak fast, and sometimes without caring about accuracy in the language, they just think of like the proficiency. What's the word for that? Not the proficiency. What is the term? Opposite to accuracy. You don't care about accuracy, but you care about how fast you are when you speak the language. What's that? I forgot the term. Fluency. Thank you. Ajahn Ben is here. Okay, we have Ajahn Ben to help me. All right, fluency. Impulsive people care more about fluency than accuracy. But reflective style people, they think more about accuracy. Put it that way. Okay. Now, people with reflective style tend to take longer but make fewer errors. This is what we know. While those with impulsive styles are quicker but make more errors. This is what we know again. But look at this one. This has been observed in L1 children. Now go back to the first children learning their first language, L1. Messer 1976 in Larson, Freeman and Long 1991 on page 195 and adults learning L2 or L2 adults in Doron 1973 in Larson, Freeman again and Long 1991. This is the secondary source, everyone, 1996 on different page. It appears that, if you look at this part over here, they said it appears that, let me highlight this. It appears that being neither too reflective nor too impulsive is the most beneficial to second language acquisition. The part over here come from Sewell, come from her, come from 2003. Even though she reviewed with the common belief over here, what we know, and then put the names of some researchers to back up her information. She put her own idea over here that neither this reflective nor impulsive is the most beneficial to second language acquisition. Which is like, hey, when you were thinking who would benefit most from learning the second language, right? And then she just said, oh, none of them. It's just like that. So maybe it is another issue that she will be working on, not reflectivity or impulsivity. We don't know this unless we read the whole research paper of Sewell 2003. So that part is actually her own criticism. Okay. All right. Now, oh, I forgot. Sorry, I need to clear this. I need to clear this thing first. Now I can move on. That's the whole thing, everyone. That's the whole thing. That's all the example I want to show you. All the examples of all types of literature reviews I want to focus on in this class. But remember, whatever you used summarizing, you know, the whole research. You try to identify area of controversy. You try to formulate the questions. You try to identify the problems in the areas of the previous research. You try to make a bit of criticism. You have to be able to, you should remember that number 1 and number 7 on page 40 are also important, because number 1 say when you review anything, make sure that it is directly related to the research questions you set from the very beginning before you start. Remember that? The research question, also the hypothesis, okay? And also in number 7 on page 40, cite all primary and secondary sources properly. When I said properly, I want you to refer back to 418 class, because that class tell you the rule of how to cite primary and secondary sources anyway, okay? Right. I still have some times over here I would like to review with you. Please, now, before I moved on, page 41 and page 42, 41 and 42 on the textbooks now, in the textbook now, 41 and 42, from review 1, review 2, review 3, review 4. There are 4 reviews over there. I want you to go back and read, and then identify which type of review is appropriate for each one. Okay, for example, you might say review 1 is all about synthesis or the summary of the whole review from number 2 on page 40. You can say review number 2 is giving a bit of criticism from the reviewer, something like that. So try to identify, okay, all of these things. And please, again, keep this in mind that this is your homework, and please send me, I will give you the link later, and you can answer that through the link of the MS form later on. Okay, I give you the link and I will remind you in the live group. So I hope you can see this part of the on my page over here. The next thing I like to show to you, and probably I will spend about 20 minutes on these things, and next time we will continue looking at this topic, is what we call schema. Now, schema is very important in second language learning. Every time you learn something new, you need schema. You need to build up some schema. But before we talked about schema, I would like you to take a look at this. Take a look at the information on page 43 of the textbook, and the information appears on the screen right now. Schema and cognitive processing. I'd like you to read 3 sentences over here. Sentence number 1, read, the traffic policeman stopped the car. And then sentence number 2 says, Superman stopped the car. And last one, T1000 stopped the car. Okay, You all understand the 3 sentences. I know this. All right. But I want you to just spend some time with me now. Since I'm not in class right now, you can try working on page 43 by yourself while I help you read this. And I assume that you're looking on page 43 right now. Let's take a look at this. There are 3 questions you need to answer following the 3 sentences we have just read over here. Remember, there are columns. You take a look at that. Column number 1 is traffic policeman stopped the car. And then column number 2 is Superman stopped the car. And then column number 3, T1000 stopped the car. My question is, please tick if it applies and cross if it does not apply. Okay? Tick or cross, I don't know. Did the hand touch the car? Traffic policeman, Superman, T1000. I come back to this point later, okay? Now, question number 2, were the car's brakes applied? Traffic policeman, Superman, T1000. Last question, did he use physical strength? Traffic policeman, Superman, T1000. Right, now, on those columns, you should have ticked. You should have ticks if the information apply. Okay, if it does not apply to anything, then cross. Now, I assumed that if I go back to the question, did the hand touch the car? For the policeman, you cross that. For the Superman, you tick. For T1000, you don't know. You probably put a question mark there. All right. Okay. Now, for question number 2, were the car's brakes applied? For traffic policeman, you would tick that. You give a tick on this one. Superman, you would cross. T1000, again, you put a question mark. I think, okay? My assumption can be wrong. You can tell me later. Did he use physical strength? I think for policeman, for traffic policeman, you cross because he used this whistle, beep, 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 right? And the Superman, did he use physical strength? I think you gave a tick. And T1000, again, a question mark. Now, what I want you to take a look at this part over here is many of you, or probably most of you, put question marks for T1000, the last column, in all questions because you don't know whether you should tick or you should cross the information because you don't know what T1000 is. Now, in short, I would call that thing, you do not have schema of T1000. This is what I mean by schema. Now, you have schema, mean you have knowledge about something. You have knowledge of the traffic policeman. Some of you or all of you experience being stopped by the traffic police. Some of you even paid the traffic policeman so you can escape. You don't have to go to the police station to pay them there, to pay a lot more money there. You want to pay less, so you just offer them under table money and go. Of course, you experience that. You experience even something like that. You experience even what they look like, what they have as a tool to stop you, what gesture they used. At what particular locations in Chiang Mai, you might find or you might come across the traffic policeman. You experience all of the things over here. That means you have schema about the traffic policeman. Superman, sure, you have schema about this. How many people have never watched Superman movie? You know Superman, and Superman has physical strength. And when he tries to stop something, he just does it right away, immediately, without the other party being, preparing themselves, to be stopped by Superman. Let's put it that way, right? Because he has super kind of strength in him. So when you have schema about traffic policeman, when you have schema about Superman, but you do not have schema about T1000, then you cannot answer questions, all of the questions, whether the hand should touch the car, the brake should be applied, or physical strength should be used. You don't know anything about that. So schema means the knowledge. Now, think about when you learn the second language. When you learn the second language, if you learn the issue that you have never learned before. In other words, you do not have schema of such a thing you are learning. Then maybe you do not learn it effectively. You might end up understanding nothing, right? But if you have schema of the things that you learn, then you probably are very quick at learning that particular thing, that issue. And of course, you might be able to help your friend to understand that too because you know about it. Put it that way. And 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 many times in our life, when it comes to learning the second language in the language classroom, you know that many times we don't understand anything because we don't have schema of such things we learn. But who will help us do this? Of course, teacher will help bridge the gap between the knowledge, the new kind of knowledge that you have, and the old knowledge that you have, so that you have sufficient knowledge to go on or to move on with the lesson. It's the teachers who will do the job over here. But suppose you don't have teachers in the room who might do this. You yourself might have to do this. And how you do this schema, the next page will tell you how you do the schema. Of course, I can answer you right now. You probably go to the library, check out some books and read about something you don't know, or ask people who know about this, and then you can move on with the lesson, something like that. Okay. Now, information on page 44 and 45 are adapted from Wyman Sharon A. It's from the website. Okay, but it's the information is already adapted, but it's tell you all about schema theory. I cannot go over about the schema theory, but one particular thing I would like to share with you over here is on paragraph 2, which is very important. When someone helps you or even you help yourself to adjust your own schema or your own knowledge before you learn something new. This is the process that normally happen, everyone, in paragraph 2. You take a look at that. Paragraph 2 about line 4. Okay, if you take a look at line 4 now, starting with the way, I want you to highlight that. The way that learners acquire information under schema theory can be divided into 3 different reactions. So 3 different steps or reaction. First of all, it's called acceptance. And the second is tuning. And last one is called restructuring. In acceptance, learner take the new input. This is a new information or new knowledge, and assimilate it into their existing schema. This is your own knowledge, your old knowledge, the knowledge you already have, without making any change to the overall schema, right? You accept that first. If you don't accept that, you don't know what it is. Then tuning is when learner realize that their existing schema or your own knowledge is not enough. It's inadequate for the new information and modify their existing schema accordingly. You have to modify that accordingly. And the last thing you do is restructuring, is the process of creating a new schema, addressing the inconsistency between the existing schema and the newly acquired information. Now you adjust everything and put them, the new and the old schema or knowledge, the same piece. So they become the same piece of information for you now, it's your knowledge. In order to, in order for you to do this, or the teacher help you to do this, they will need some kind of activities, everyone. And these activities in the second language acquisitions theory, we call this thing the cognitive processing theory. Okay. What do we mean by the cognitive processing theory? When you want to make the information learnable for someone, then you need some type of activities that will help them understand the information, and in such a way that helping them, that you help them understand the information you want to tell them. You need these activities. The first type of activity is what I call transfer. And the second one is analysis. Sometimes you need to transfer the information. Sometimes you need to analyze the information. Sometimes you need to memorize something. Put that into your memory. Sometimes you need to evaluate the pieces of information. Sometimes you need to synthesize, to combine everything, okay, in the whole piece. Sometimes you need to interpret. You need to try to understand the information. And last one, sometimes you need to apply the information in a new context so that you understand more about the piece of information you are learning. Over here, I would just when I keep talking like this, I want you to match these words onto the meanings of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, I give you the answer later. But I would like to just, I keep talking, just try to match this and watch me, what I need to do this. No, certain things like this one over here from, sorry. Something like this. Whoops, I cannot, sorry. Okay, transfer, analysis, memorization, evaluation, synthesis, and interpretation. They are on what I call the superficial level of cognitive processing. Why do I say this superficial level? Is because they are easy to do. For example, memorization is super easy. If you want to memorize English vocabulary, words, sometimes you can just repeat the words many times, right? Before you can memorize them. This is easy things to do. You don't have to think much about it. But if you have to take the IELTS or the TOEFL exam, for example, because they come with hard words, sometimes you need the flashcard to keep the words in the flashcard and the meaning on the backside of the card, so you can remember or memorize the words. But memorization does not require any deep cognitive processing at all. You don't need much thinking. Same thing, transfer, or interpretation. But maybe the more deeper one, the much deeper one, the deeper one would be the analysis and the synthesis over here, because you need to do something about them, okay? And then this one over here, can I mark this? Oh, okay, wait. This over here, application over here is what I call the deep level of cognitive processing. That one, okay? Why? These are, I would just call superficial level. Well, some are deeper than the others anyway, like analysis and synthesis are deeper than memorization anyway. Transfer, evaluation, and interpretation are also deeper than memorization. And that's why many times in the English language textbook, you see memorization activity come first. And this thing, number 7, application, comes at last, because it is a deep level of cognitive processing. Okay, let me clear this and then I give you the answer right now. So I can answer you right now. Number 1, transfer. Oh, okay, what happened? Number 1, transfer should be B, changing information from one form to another. Okay, you can see here. When you're changing information from one form to another, we call this transfer. For example, you can read a text, and later on the teacher might say, can you read the text, and then based on the text, makes the conversation or write the conversation dialogue based on the text. So you change the reading text to the conversation dialogue. Sometimes you read something like the whole text and the teacher say, write a summary about, or what summary is something else, sorry. Can you write your own opinion about what you read? And again, this is transfer, because from reading to writing, okay? Next one is analysis, and you should say G, breaking a whole into parts. You analyze information every time. You look at small parts of the things. We call analysis. Memorization should be C, when you recognize and recall information. Now, memorization, you try to remember, and after that, you can recall what it means or what they mean. Okay. Evaluation is what? Evaluation is E, judging value based on criteria or justifying. You have to have the criteria before you can judge something. You can judge your friend writing pieces. You can judge, a reading text, something like that. But you depend on the criteria for judging. Number 5 is synthesis. In doing synthesis, you can put parts into whole. That is opposite to analysis. Analysis, you break whole into parts, but synthesis, you put parts into whole. I show you more example. Next one is interpretation. This is the discovering relationship, comparing and inferring. When you infer the information, when you state the relationship of the information, when you compare the information, they are all interpretation. And the last one is application, is F, using information in a new situation. Okay, I show you some example over here. This is the text from an English language textbook. If you take a look at this one over here, the textbooks of ages and stages of life, you can see that the vocabulary, main vocabulary are listed over here. Main vocabulary, main words are over here. Sorry, it's become very noisy in here. I have to stop. All right, okay, now I can go on. Look, and then the second thing, you can see the vocabulary of English words being listed over here of the life in order. If you look at the pictures over here, they ask you work with the partner, match the photo with this word. There are more photos down below here. I could not give you all photo. For example, you probably match this one with child, and then you can match this guy over here with senior citizen. The whole activity here, the objective of the whole activity here is for you to remember the words. This is what we call memorization. Now, if you are new learners of the language, you do not know this word, middle age, adult, teenager, young adult, baby, child, senior citizen, then you do not go on with the lesson. You need to know the vocabulary first. And part of this thing is what we call memorization. If you look at number 2, also adolescence, birth, childhood, death, middle age, and old age. These are all life order, stages of life. And of course, the intentions of the author of the textbook is for you to remember all the words, and we call this thing memorization, which is the most superficial level of cognitive processing. Okay, it's easy to do. Next things I show you is this one over here. Listen to 3 people talking about themselves and their family. Choose the correct alternative for each person. Now they have over here choices for you to choose. Joshua is a child or a teenager. He has a big or a small family, right? Olivia is a child or teenager. She has got a big or a small family. Or she spends a lot of time with her aunt or cousin. Or Jessica is a senior citizen. She got 4 or 12 children. She is married or divorced. All of this information over here, I will call this information selective listening. When you selectively listens to particular piece of information in order to answer the question or choose the choice or options over here. But in order to do that, this one over here is just a repetition of the memorization part, because they want you to memorize the word. A child, a teenager, something like aunt, cousin, married, divorced, grandfather, father, all of these words. But deeper than memorization is something else, because when you selectively listen to pieces of information like this, you pay particular attention to particular pieces of information. In other words, you try to break the whole pieces of information of what you hear or listen to into small pieces, and we call this analysis. And these things can serve as memorization and also analysis. So you have a deeper level of cognitive processing over here, again, in the English lessons. Next part, what I want to show you is this thing. I'll be stopping in a few minutes. All right. I don't look at time. Okay, I have 5 minutes. Now, schema and cognitive processing. If you read this one over here, if you read this text over here, what are your parents doing now? And it's the whole text of reading, right? The whole text, you will spend more and more time. But if you are a teacher, when you look at the text like this, you look at question number 1. First, look at question number 1. Question number 1 say, look at the photos, what you can see in them, what you think the text is about, and guess. When you guess the text is all about, you try to look just at the photos and then you formulate your thoughts, based on the photo you've seen over here. You basically you guess. Part of that is just like you try to synthesize the information based on the photos, right? But if you read the text on and on, like number 2, you read the text and choose a good title. When you think of a good title is the general term for the whole piece of information you are going to read. You have to put small pieces together in order to come up with a good title, right? A good title can be number 1, can be number 2, can be number 3. Unhappy families, protection 24 hours a day, it is a good idea. Or number 1, new technology in the USA. If you look at all of these things and you choose one, suppose that you choose number 2. Before you can choose number 2, because number 2 is a general idea, you have to put a lot of small pieces of information together before you decide on number 2. And number 2 is a general idea. And we still call this thing synthesis. And again, synthesis is a more deeper level of cognitive processing than memorization. All right, let me clear this and then I'll be stopping soon. I said I'll be stopping, but I cannot stop. I am half an hour already. I don't know. I won't watch my I don't have a watch over here. I'm sorry if I go over the time that I promised you I would do. Okay, I promise this is the last slide. And after that, we can take a look at these more. And if you look at this one over here, number 3, read the text again and choose the best answer. Now, the answer is not about the title of the text. It's not about the main idea of the text. It's not about the general idea of the text, but it's all about the small pieces of information from each particular paragraph. You have to read and pay attention and choose the text. Sometimes you can just read and point out the answer right away. And of course, when you break the whole piece of reading into the small pieces of information of each item from number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this, I call that thing analysis of cognitive processing. This is analysis. You need to analyze the whole text so you can see small parts of the information and be able to answer number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? Oh my gosh, okay. I think I need to stop right over here. It's the power will be 10 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes. Okay, they will turn off the power over here. Okay, we have the power black out to save the energy because we are on top of the mountain right now. Well, everyone, thank you so much. And if you have the question, please save them and I will see you in class on Monday. Okay, see you 9:30 on Monday. And please look at my feedback to your homework sent to you in the group right now with your personal password. Remember your personal password to open and look at my feedback. Thank you so much. See you on Monday. Bye-bye. I don't have the end credit over here. Oh, I have to stop sharing first. Now, okay, and end. And then I